Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest for you today, David Fradin, who is classically trained as an HP product manager and was then recruited by Apple to bring the first hard disk drive on a PC to market, and later became the Apple business unit manager at the same level as Steve Jobs. He is the author of many books, including Building Insanely Great Products, Organizing and Managing Insanely Great Products, and the widely published Successful Product Design and Management, all available now on Amazon. He has trained companies such as Cisco on these topics worldwide, and his mission is to help products succeed. David, welcome to the show.
Glad to be with you.
Excellent. Now, before we get into this, we generally have a little bit of an icebreaker on the show. So, please, David, tell us which, in terms of Microsoft or Apple products, which do you prefer and why?
It's first because it just works. Second, the Windows products, for example, who do you have to press on get started in order to shut down the computer? And the brand is the promise of the product, the promise of the company. And you open up a Microsoft product and you're on a deadline, and they insist that you upgrade it, and there's no way around it. Microsoft historically has decided for their users what's best for their users, while Apple lets their users decide what's best for themselves. So, the brand of Microsoft was such that you could codify it in a little tagline. Microsoft should be helping more people feel more stupid than any other company in the world.
Definitely no love lost there for Microsoft then, huh? Okay. Before we dig in further, David, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I was I born in Detroit, Michigan, went to Cass Tech High School, engineering, aerospace engineering, and then later interdisciplinary engineering, which was a good basis for a technically trained product manager at the University of Michigan. Started the flying club there, started a nationwide student organization and supported the SST, the space shuttle, and energy independence. Had 15,000 members on 43 campuses nationally. Went to Minnesota, became one of the first environmental mediators through the Environmental Balance Association of Minnesota. Then Hewlett Packard recruited me to join their corporate PR department to help them in the community and public relations of siting new facilities, which they were having difficulty back then. And then, as you mentioned in the intro, I was recruited by Apple because I was an HP product manager and brought the first hard disk drive to market. It was very cheap. It was only $3,500. And in today's dollars, that'd be about 10 or 12,000. And it was very, very big. It was 5 megabytes in size. And nobody could ever understand why they would need 5 megabytes. And in the last 30 seconds, we just chewed up about 5 megabytes of storage space to see how the technologies have advanced since then. Then Apple noticed that I knew how to manage because I had managed nonprofits and companies and political campaigns before. And they asked me to be the group product manager for the Apple III. Then after a couple, 3 weeks on the job, the company, under Steve Jobs' insistence, canceled the product line because he feared it would compete with his beloved Macintosh, which he has not yet introduced. So I was coming out of the corporate headquarters a couple, 3 weeks later, and John Scully sent Ida Cole out to grab me as I was leaving in the parking lot. Ida was then the marketing manager for the division that I was in, and she ushered me into a little conference room with Scully, Joe Graziano, the CFO, Del Yoakum, the VP of manufacturing, and Ida, and myself. And Scully was sitting at the head of this little conference room table holding a super VisiCalc spreadsheet. It says, Dave, we just found that, we canceled the product line and we have $20 million worth of piece parts, which I think is about $200 or so billion today, scattered between our manufacturing facilities in Singapore, Dallas, and Cork Island. What should we do? And I said, what do you mean we, paleface? And he didn't get the joke. So I had to explain to him that there was a television show back in the 50s and movies in the '70s and '80s about the Lone Ranger who was a masked man, and he rode around on a white horse called Trigger, and he had an Indian sidekick. And when I tell a story to Indians in India, I have to say an American Indian sidekick by the name of Tonto. And the Lone Ranger says, Tonto, we're here in the desert of Arizona. We're surrounded by 10,000 yelling, screaming Indians, and all they want to do is scalp us. What should we do? And Tonto's response was, what do you mean, we, paleface? And I said, you canceled the product line, but you never asked me about it. But as the group product manager, you have given me the full responsibility for the success of the product line, but none of the authority. He says, okay, what should we do? And I told him the story of Alpha General's Soul of the New Machine, the story of the IBM PC, which was sent down to Boca Raton, Florida, get as far away from IBM's corporate headquarters, where the sales force was the kings and queens of the company, and they kept trying to kill the personal computer because they thought it would compete with their mainframe commissions and sales. And I told him about my friend Kelly Johnson, who ran the Skunk Works at Lockheed down in the Palmdale Desert. And he had been set up as an independent business unit, separate from Lockheed, and he could bring aircraft like the SR-71, the X-1, the X-15 to fruition and flight in less than 18 months, while the rest of Lockheed would take 7 years to get the same job done. And I explained to him that I tried to put together a promotion and get it out to the field. And I had to go through 8 levels of bureaucracy before the promotion would land in the salesperson's lap at the dealership. And I said, you know what, it's like pushing a wet noodle. And he gasped. He says, okay, make me a proposal. So on July 15th, 1983, I presented to the executive committee a business plan for what to do with the product line. One of the 5 options was shut the product line down, like the executive committee had done, and show disloyalty to the 50,000 Apple III owners out there. At the time, the Apple III was the 3rd most popular computer in the world in terms of unit sales. Another option I laid out is let the market decide. And I was a firm believer in that because when I was in aerospace engineering at Michigan, we went to the Apollo, I think it was the 16 or 15 launch, which had 3 astronauts, all University of Michigan grads. So the school had chartered an aircraft, flew us down to Cape Kennedy, I think it was called at the time, and we observed the launch of the spacecraft, and they took us by bus to the Walt Disney World, which was under development. And the chief Imagineer, they don't call engineers at Walt Disney engineers, they call them Imagineers, sort of like predating innovation that everyone's talking about today. And one of my fellow students asked the chief Imagineer, how did you decide where to put the sidewalks in this new amusement park? And everybody in my class, including I, laughed. And the chief Imagineer said, that's not a funny question. It's very serious. He said the 100 Imagineers at Disney World argued about where to put the sidewalks for about 3 days. And then one day, a junior Imagineer says, let's just not put in any sidewalks. And everyone thought, what are you, crazy? We're building a major amusement park and not going to have any sidewalks? He says, no, we just plant grass everywhere. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, we look to see where the grass is brown and been trodden down, and that's where people decided. The market will decide where they're going to walk, and we put sidewalks in there. And then when I was researching for my book, Building a Sailing Great Product, I went and searched on the internet for pictures of Walt Disney World, and lo and behold, there is no grass there in any of the pictures. They have paved everything with concrete, because apparently everybody was walking through the bushes and everything else. So one of the 5 options I presented to the executive committee was let the market decide. And then Floyd Kwame, who at the time was executive vice president of marketing sales, said, Dave, if a dealer calls you and we've decided to shut the product line down or let the market decide, what would you say to the dealer if you were presented with those options? I said, if the decision was to let the market decide. I would tell the dealer that so long as they continue to market and sell and service and support, we will do the same at the corporate level, and then we'll shut the product line down when the market decides it doesn't want to buy the product anymore. Unknowing to me, I was defining what the Boston Consulting Group defined about 5 years later as a cash cow. But Floyd, if you pick the option of shutting the product line down, uh, and everyone in the room, since Ann Bowers was even sitting in the back of the room, she was the VP of HR. She was also the VP of HR of Intel, and she was married to Bob Noyce, one of the co-founders of Intel. And I think she was instrumental in getting the Apple values put together, which covered things like empathy for our customers, achievement, aggressiveness, positive social contribution, individual performance, team spirit, innovation and vision, individual growth and reward, quality, excellence, and the last one, most importantly, good management. And if they shut the product line down because they've decided that in their superior intelligence that they knew better than what the market could decide, uh, then that would be directly contrary to the values of Apple. So I said, Floyd, if you guys decide to shut the product line down, I'll give the dealer your phone number. And everybody in the room laughed because they knew that it was so contrary to their Apple values. So about a week or two later, I got a call from Ken Zerbe, and he asked me if I would take over the management of the product line. They would give me a budget, $4 million, 17 people. I could sign a check for up to $200,000, no questions asked, full independence and authority. They didn't want to call me a general manager, but they did call me a business unit manager, or BUM for short. And we went out in the next 11 months and sold another 25,000 Apple IIIs, generated enough money to keep about 1,000 to 1,500 Apple employees employed, and created enough profits for Steve to be able to finish developing and introducing his Macintosh.
That is that's quite a story, and my question in all of this is, um, during that time, what do you think was probably the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you overcome?
It was that story that I just told, that they shut the product line down, put me out of work, so to speak. And my challenge was to get about 80 people to contribute their knowledge about the product line and distill that down into an 80-page business plan and present it succinctly to the executive committee to get a decision that would be favorable not only to the Apple III, but also to the company. If we went out there and people had bought the Apple III, which was selling at the time, plus the hard drive and software is used mainly for small business accounting and office applications, like word processing and very large spreadsheets, they would have been pissed that the company was disloyal to them. So what I was able to show is if you're loyal back to your customers, they'll continue to show loyalty to you. If we had just arbitrarily shut the product line down and screwed those 50,000 customers out there, they would have left the Apple fold and probably would never have bought an Apple product ever again. I know in my case, if I have bad experiences with products from certain companies, I'll never buy their products ever again. They've lost my loyalty because they showed no loyalty to me.
And just tying this in here, I mean, you've obviously accomplished a lot and did a real slog through the mud. How did you stay motivated during that time? How did you keep inspired to keep going?
Well, I was inspired by the values that Apple had and that they mapped closely into my values, and that I could get things done. One of my, if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, down at the lowest level is food and clothing. And then if you are able to rise to the highest levels, in my case, my motivation is to get things done and to be wanted and accepted. And I could do that by selling, in the case of the Apple III and in other projects and companies that I've been associated with.
And you have accomplished so much. So after writing these books And so do you still do consulting then? Do you still consult?
Yeah. When people call me and they have a particular success problem with their product or their product line, then I can come in, take a look at the situation, and develop a business plan and a business model for them to be able to make money.
And you're saying any product, or is it any? I mean, are we saying any product, or are we saying any product that's got a use?
All products and services I can consult on. I tend to be more in the high tech area, uh, cloud computing, uh, software development, hardware development. One of my clients, not only in terms of training, but also in terms of consulting, is Cisco, and then half a dozen other companies around the world that I've helped out over the years.
Actually, that segues pretty good into my next question. You've been around the tech industry. You've seen it sort of from the ground up for many years. What's your take on AI and what it's going to do to the processes that you painstakingly went through?
It's going to significantly change things. I use a little AI tool called Perplexity, which will go out and summarize multiple websites and put together a summarized answer for you. And probably 98 times out of 100 is right. So, for example, I put my name in there and it came back and said I was prominent in the field of product management, which was very nice of it to say that. Uh, and I tried a chat GPT or something like that. No, I take that back. I tried Microsoft's AI thing. I put in my name and it got about 75% of my background right. I put in a former business partner of mine and it got about 30% right. Said he went to MIT. He didn't have a college education. I got a number of things wrong. So uh, AI can be very, very helpful to help things out uh, quicker in this general sense of just searching for answers. But it depends upon what material it's trained on. And for example, Meta is using the posts in Facebook to train its AI algorithms. And that's really scary because I don't know what the percentage is, but it's pretty high of the fake news that's published on Facebook. And they're training AI to follow that. I gave a talk last year to the Worldwide Software Product Managers conference that was held up at UC Berkeley about 20 some uses of AI just in the field of product management. So it can become very, very useful, but it also could become just as dangerous as the crowdsourcing or of things like Google and Facebook and Twitter, because if there's no management and monitoring and governance over the algorithms, they could go crazy.
And do you foresee AI replacing a lot of jobs in the future?
I think in the lower level areas, yeah, but there's going to also have to be people that know how to use AI and can discern when it's right and when it's not right. That's one of the nice things about Perplexity is that if you put in a query, it cites the sources. So you can go directly to the source to confirm that the sources that's feeding it are accurate.
Okay, so it not only pulls the information, it cites where it got that information, so you can sort of, I guess, make sure that information is correct. And why don't you tell us a little bit about these books and your process for writing them? When did you first decide that you want
In the early 2010s, I had been giving speeches at the local product management conferences called PCAPs on building and scaling great products. And it was very well received, always one of the top presentations at that conference and one of the best attended. So I thought I would put my thoughts down in the book, Building and Scaling Great Products, which revolves around what I've identified as the 5 keys to product success.
Can you go into those 5 keys just briefly? Just tell us what those are.
Sure, it stands in the mnemonic of SPICE, of my company's name, Spice Catalyst. The S stands for strategy, a product market strategy for the product, which I detail in my Wiley book in 32 parts of what encompasses a product market strategy. Keep in mind, a market is a place where you go to buy something, like a grocery store. Marketing is the process of getting people or customers to go to that market and buy. So this is the product market strategy, the market strategy for the product. And it covers such things as what is it that your customer wants to do, your competitive research, your market research, the personas of your target market, your total available market, your target market, um, your product positioning, which is one of the most important things to do. Then the various strategies like pricing strategy, distribution strategy, service support, and training strategies, and so forth. And then your product line extensions if you want to develop it into a product line. P in SPICE stands for repeatable processes, which the Harvard Business School says you can't have success as a company unless you have well-defined and documented processes that can become mature. The I stands for having the information necessary to make the decisions about the product and the market. The C is perhaps the most important. It's your customers. Understanding what your customer wants to do, when they want to do it, where they want to do it, how they want to do it, what's standing in their way, how important is it for them to get whatever it is they want to do done, and how satisfied are they with the current way of doing things. And then lastly is the E in or employees. And again, in the Wiley book, this one here, Successful Product Design and Management, I have a whole chapter about the 130 competencies or skill sets an individual and or an organization must have in order for a product to succeed. Now, most of those things are not done, and that's why, according to a couple of professors at North Carolina University, in their studies have found about 35% of all new products introduced each year fail. And that represents somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion in wasted research and development because these 5 keys are not religiously followed in these organizations.
Wow, that is a lot of competencies. So what you need to really create a product and get it to market succeed is you need a little spice and you need to be competent in 130,000 things or have a team that is competent in 130,000 things.
Not 130,000, 130.
Oh, okay. 130. Okay, that's a little better. That's a little that's a little better. But 130 things. That's still quite a few. If you had to take all that knowledge and all that wisdom and sort of condense it, and again, I know it's not going to be the silver bullet to everything, but for somebody who maybe has an idea and they want to get it out there, what's the one sort of tip that you could give for them to sort of start?
First, do 4 steps in understanding what it is that your customer wants to do. Go out and observe people trying to do that thing that they think the problem is that their product or service is trying to solve. Second, interview about 40 to 80 of them along those lines of what is it that they want to do, why they want to do it, where they want to do it, and so forth. Then, based upon that, you're able to refine your questionnaire and then do a survey of about 800 to 1,200 of your target customers. If you're selling B2C, business to consumer, then it'll be individuals. If you're B2B, then you want to talk to about 40 to 80 companies. And then if you have big data available, like you could use through analytics and use with AI, you can use that to also refine what it is that your customer wants to do. The reason this is important is that Henry Ford, for example, had the idea that everybody would want an automobile or a car. So you went out and asked people, would you like to have a car or an automobile? And they said no. They said they prefer to have a faster horse. Now, if he had just sat out on the stoop of one of the saloons in Dearborn, Michigan, not far from where I grew up, where the Ford Motor Company was founded, he would have noticed people beating their horses to get through town faster or to pull their carriages faster to carry their products to wherever they wanted to go. And they had no idea that this thing called a car or automobile existed. And that's probably why he ended up calling it a horseless carriage or a horseless buggy. So you can't ask people what they need or what they want, because that requires them to understand the problem they're trying to solve, and they have to innovate in their mind and come up with a solution. But they can't tell you and show you by their actions what it is that they want to do. So that's the most important thing. And to take 3 to 6 months to understand that before you spend a nickel on product development or engineering.
I've always been curious, and this sounds like a very involved process. Um, what's your personal take and your professional take on these products that get to market? And, like, I don't think they did any of what you said. I mean, I can think of a few off the top of my head: the Pet Rock, Pogs, Pet Rock with a USB cord, dehydrated water. Um, all of these have been successful products at one point, but what do you think was the psychology behind that, or the market? How did they get to market?
I happen to know the guy that invented the pet rock, and it was a joke. It was funny. Um, uh, and that went viral to the stores, and people were talking about it long before social media. What were some of the others that you mentioned?
Yeah. So the other one was there was one something called Pogs. It was a short-lived um it was a short-lived game that was designed wherein you would take a slammer and you would throw it at this rubber mat where they had discs, and these discs would have a blank side and a drawn side. And when you hit that, you knocked it over, and the little, I guess, coins, if you want to call them that, the ones that were face up, you got to keep, and the ones that were face down, one got sent back to the pile, and you threw the heavier, what's it called, the slammer onto it again. It was always interesting to me how any of these products got to be popular. There's a ton more examples like that as well.
Well, there's a lot of them that are fads, and they come and go, and they have no staying power. Like there's no more pet rocks around these days. Then there are other products or services like Uber, where what was his name? Travis was living in L.A., and I used to live down there. I live in Northern California in Silicon Valley. And when I was down there, if I needed a taxi cab, I would call one on the phone, and then it wouldn't show up. And then you call it back, and they still, oh, it's going to be there in 10 minutes. It doesn't show up. So I was late for my meetings. And I'm sure Travis had that same kind of a problem. What he wanted to do was to get from point A to point B in a shared car. Now, so that's where the idea for Uber came from. Now, if he lived in New York City or in Washington, D.C., as I did briefly, if you just raised your hand and scratched your nose, 10 cabs would pull up. So there was no need to have a smartphone application to block a cab ride to go someplace. So it really depends about the environment, where you're growing up, and your ability to recognize a problem that people are trying to solve. That was one of the great things about Steve Jobs, is that he realized that personal computing in the early 1980s were very, very complex. You had Microsoft DOS, which was command line driven, and he saw a graphical user interface along with a mouse, and it had Apple adopted that for the Lisa and later for the Macintosh, and he called it the computer for the rest of us. So, and later when he introduced the iPhone, he hid in the bushes outside of the Apple store in Palo Alto just to observe people as they were coming and going to the store. So he had a keen ability to observe and then internalize what it is that people want to do.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So you've accomplished so much in your life, David, and you've got these three great books now. So what would you say is next for you, and where do you see yourself in the next year?
Well, I just finished writing a book that my dad contributed to. He served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II. And when he was away from home, he would write really funny letters home. And his name was Hyman. Sometimes he went by the nickname Jaime. So I'm about to publish a book called Letters from My Jaime. And it's a personal, brief biographical history from the late 1800s in Ukraine, where his father grew up and immigrated to the United States in 1914, and through his life growing up on the streets of Washington, D.C., and serving in the military.
And is that you said you just recently, is that finished then? Is it published?
It's finished. I've got a editor working on it now, and in short order, I hope to have it up on Amazon. Letters from my Jaime.
Well, excellent. We'll have to keep an eye out for that for sure. Okay. And just before we wrap up things here, was there something, David, that you felt maybe I didn't ask that I should have asked, or maybe a point that we should have covered?
I think one very important point is values. When I wrote Building Sailing Great Products, I went back and looked at the 500 companies that were originally listed on the Fortune 500 worldwide. And about 200 of them had values and followed values, and about 300 of them had no values. Almost without exceptions, those without values, these companies without values, are out of business. They didn't last until the present day. Then I thought, I wonder if that would apply to me in my personal career. So I made a list of the 25 or so organizations I've been affiliated with over the last 50 years. And I then had a column which I would check off for each of them. Did they have values? Then I'd have a third column. Did they follow those values? Then I had a fourth column. Did those values map it to my values? Without exception, those organizations whose had values and followed those values, I thrived in. I was very, very happy. At those organizations that had either no values or had values but didn't follow them, I was very unhappy with. And almost without exception, either I quit or I got fired. I would call it a mercy killing, a mercy firing. And I felt very happy the next day that I no longer had to go back into that toxic kind of environment. I mentioned this to a friend of mine who was my property manager for a condo I have in Maui that I rent out to vacationers. And he had left that job and came to the Bay Area. And I suggested after he does his interviews, asks the company about values. And he told me the next day he went out and interviewed with the company, and he did that. And he and the hiring manager ended up talking about values for about 4 hours. And they offered him a job, and he said he's never been happier in his life.
That is something that should be more important in today's world for sure, is the values. And is it so when you were working for a company that had values and they followed those values, you were happier. Now, did those companies' values always also align with your own values, or
Yes.
it's just the fact that they had values and they were following
So they had to align with my values. For example, if it's a company and all they care about is profits,
them?
and to hell with the environment, to hell with the employees, uh, I would not be happy there. But if it was a company that had values like the HP way or like the Apple values that I mentioned earlier, I was very happy working there. I thrived there. I got promoted.
Excellent. And and this advice that you gave to this individual that asked about the values. So you recommend that everybody who may be currently, thinking about maybe even changing careers, should they ask the company where they work about their values, as well as, when they're shopping around, they ask the company that they're going to, or should they just go right away?
Well, if they're at a company and they're unhappy, chances are it was a lack of synchronization between their personal values and the organization's values as done. It doesn't matter what they say, it's what they do. I've had people say, don't tell me what you're going to do. Your actions are making so much noise, I can't hear what you're saying. Volkswagen, for example, a few years ago, had a very wonderful set of values on their website, which I looked up around the time that they were caught in the scandal of programming the emissions data that they were giving on their diesel cars and lying about it. And that was directly in conflict with their published values. That cost the company billions of dollars in lost brand. And that's the reason they're putting in charging stations for electric vehicles around the world to try to make up for the pollutants they put into the air during the years that they lied about their diesel carbon emissions. It was quite amazing at VW that there was several senior engineers and several members of senior management that knew that they were cheating and lying, but did not know anything about it. They should have. So if you are in a situation where it's your values and the values of the organization are not synchronized, then it becomes very difficult when you go into meetings to make decisions because people are coming from different sets of values. If someone is arguing we should go for market share, or someone else is arguing we should go for maximum profits, and that we shouldn't pay our employees what they are worth, contrary to what Apple does and what HP does, then they may be very unhappy. And the sooner they get out of there and then spend all their time looking for a company whose values maps into their values, the happier that they will be.
Okay, well, that sounds like very good advice. So hopefully, if anybody is in that situation, they'll have one more question they could use to maybe throw somebody off in their interview process.
Well, they should get to the end of the interview because the employer is going to be interviewing them. And then when they say, do you have any questions? If you haven't discussed values by then, you say, yes, I do. What are the values of the organization?
So, lastly, before we wrap things up here, how can our listeners get in touch with you, David, in case they want to reach out?
They can go to my website, spicecatalyst.com, and my contact information is there. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name, David Fradin on LinkedIn, and connect with me there. And they can go to Amazon and search for my name as an author, and all the books that I've written are available for purchase there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being on the show today, David. And to all our listeners, we will put that information in the description of the show so that you won't. And thank you once again for tuning in and for your inspiration and motivation. And if you can't find that inspiration and motivation for whatever reason, then be that inspiration and motivation for someone else. Until next time.
Thanks for having me.